Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, Persona 5 Strikers for the PlayStation 4, PC, and Nintendo Switch. 6 months after the events of Persona 5, not Persona 5 Royal, that's pretty much just non-canon at this point, and of course, almost 4 years after the original Persona 5 came out on Western shores, we are finally getting the spin-off, Persona 5 Strikers. And by the title should tell you that this is not like Persona 5 or Persona 5 Royal. This is not an RPG, even though it does have RPG elements with skill trees and leveling systems and the weak points that we've all come to know and love when it comes to Persona games, the magic, the summons, and of course the Personas themselves. But what makes this different from any other Persona 5 experience thus far is the fact that this is a hack and slash game, a Musou game, similar to Dynasty Warriors and Hyrule Warriors, because it's made by the same people who are behind the Dynasty Warriors games. So of course there are a copious amount of enemies that you have to take on in a real-time battle scenario. This is not a turn-based system. This is a situation where you will be able to control all 4 party members as they hack slash use their Persona summons and try to survive these various dungeons or jails as they're called in Strikers. But a lot of the little things, as I noted earlier, that came from Persona 5 and the other Persona games is a part of the gameplay. Enemies have weaknesses, mostly elemental in nature. So if you're able to take advantage of someone's weakness by attacking them with, say, ice, and they're knocked down, you can perform an all-out attack, which is something that we've seen in previous Persona games as well, that does heavy damage to downed opponents. One of the new implementations that wasn't in the previous games that is in this one is the Showtime attack, which is filled up as you defeat more and more enemies during a battle. Most of the time you will not be able to do this when it comes to the smaller enemies because a majority of those enemies can be taken down pretty quickly. But if you have a bigger group of enemies that you're taking on, or a boss, for example, there's a chance that with successful attacks and combos and teaming up and baton passes to other characters, you'll be able to fill up that Showtime meter. And when you Showtime meter someone, once again, huge damage to that enemy. And if you do it properly, you can actually win a fight. As your character levels up, of course, they gain special abilities and skills that become more profound as you of course progress through the game. The thing that really makes this unique is the fact that every character of course plays differently. Just like in an RPG or just like in Persona 5, every character has a role to play and they can do that very well. With the addition of special attacks, each character has a specific special attack that can be utilized without fear and usually is a great way to top off a combo. You can use regular attacks, which in the case of the PS4 is by hitting the square button. And then you can top off that combo of strike attacks with square by hitting the triangle button on the PS4, and that will unleash a special attack. Depending on how many hits that you've landed, that attack can change. But you can also do the special attack by itself. And one of the best things that I have to know when it comes to the original Persona 5 and other Persona games is the fact that if Joker does fall in battle, it's not game over. There are a few changes when it comes to the skill level system. Instead of having the Confidant system from Persona 5, you now have the Bond system, which increases as you win battles, interact with party members, complete side missions, and progress through the story. The Bond system is actually attached to the overall skill tree that affects every character that you play with. With Bond points, you can buy things like upgrades to the HP, or even make it easier for Bond points to increase in number as you progress. Of course, going back to the things that we've seen before in the Persona games, the Velvet Room returns so you are able to fuse Personas. The difference between this game and Persona 5, the original RPG, is the fact that when it comes to Personas, they are dropped after a battle instead of having to coerce them to join your team like you did in Persona 5 and Royale. There are a lot of little things to take part in when it comes to the gameplay that you have to be mindful of, like ambush attacks by jumping onto a nearby balloon, for example, and being able to ambush an enemy so you can get the first hit, or making sure that the enemies don't see you to cause the alert meter that is associated with the jail to rise. and if it rises to 100%, you're kicked out of the jail, and it can even lock down treasures. From a story perspective, this is definitely going to be a lot less strenuous, a lot less long-winded, and really a lot less memorable from what I'm seeing in terms of length. But in terms of character interaction and just the joy of seeing this group that you've gotten to know and love if you played the previous Persona games reunite, so far it's been great revisiting the old crew. But for those who are just playing a Persona game for the first time, or a Persona 5 game for the first time, this will be a little bit off-putting when it comes to the story and the narrative and the character interactions. Technically, the game is very good, it looks great, it plays well, I haven't had any crashes or game-breaking bugs, though of course, like any Musou game, it can be kind of overwhelming when you have a plethora of enemies and it's hard to see where your character is and you're trying to dodge so you don't get hit, because of course you're playing a game where the story is rooted around the close confines of an urban city. So sometimes it can be a little off-putting when you're trying to fight the camera, trying to get away, trying to dodge. When it comes to more open spaces, it's a lot more enjoyable than some of the close quarters combat areas. Overall, if you're a fan of not only the Persona franchise, Persona 5 in general, but also a Musou game, a Dynasty Warriors style game, this is the best of both worlds if there ever was one. You have the RPG elements and the Persona elements that we've come to know and love, while also having the hack and slash fun of the Dynasty Warriors games. If you're a fan of either genre, really, to me, you should enjoy this bar none, especially if you enjoy Persona 5, if you enjoy the characters, the atmosphere, and the intrigue of what could happen next whenever you go through the next dungeon. If you don't like the hack and slash Dynasty Warriors style games, you may not like this that much either. It's a little bit different than those, but it's still rooted in that formula, and if that's the case, if that's not the formula that you're drawn to, you won't enjoy this either, even if you are a big fan of the RPG game that came before it. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. Persona 5 Strikers for the PlayStation 4, PC, and Nintendo Switch. Now if you don't mind, I have to go back into this jail that features a very angry and power-hungry girl who thinks she's the ruler of every man's desires, I guess? But more importantly, I have to fight a whole bunch of monsters because these people have been terribly corrupted, and I will have to take and steal their hearts and make them say, "Oh Lordy!"